So I'll open up Photoshop just to show you how fucking stupid this idea is. So with conventional artillery, basically what you have is, let's just say this is like a cannon.
Can you establish causation without a causal mechanism?
You mean without a causal mechanism? Yes, you can. Um so you don't need any kind of mechanism to establish causality. What you need All you need is a strong enough link between an exposure and an outcome. So, like, say with cigarette smoking, for example, if we had no understanding of genetics, I don't know, biology, cells, crap like that, if you could show that people who smoke have a much higher risk of getting cancer versus those who don't, then you can establish a causal relationship. You don't need to understand how it happens. You just need to demonstrate.
It's Hemingway. Fairy Frankie is my liaison to an old Texas mercenary group. We all used to stick lit cigarettes up each other's ass just to see if we could stay warm in the barn at night. React.
You know what? I show it on camera, and here's the messed up part. People have made memes about it, and you know what? I still do it. I still show myself. I'm not embarrassed. And when I say people have made memes, I mean like if you're embarrassed of your loose skin, you would die. You would die if someone made and spread the stuff people have made about me. I mean, it's stuff like they made memes calling me a flesh golem, like that I'm melting, or that I look like melted candle wax, and people literally mock it. You know what? They mock it.
Athlete candles.
And you know what? Yes, there might happen to where someone's going to make fun of it. But hey, at least you're not famous like me. So at least, 100,000 people haven't seen a meme of people making fun of it.
I don't think body shaming is good to do, but the thing is, Blaha body shames people all the fucking time, so fuck him. Thanks for the nation, though, Mac. Yeah, so the only thing you need to show causality is to show an association that is strong enough to prove a causal relationship. You don't need a mechanism. So randomized trials are usually ideal for that kind of thing because you can control out most confounding variables. You can establish causality with things like prospective cohorts, though, because again, you like in the case of cigarette smoking, you can show a strong enough relationship and also eliminate enough confounding variables. So with conventional artillery, a artillery shell gets shot out, then this will basically be the actual projectile. What happens is with most artillery is it'll explode midair and it will send out shrapnel and just like these sharp metal pieces, and that will cover like a certain area. And if you're like an enemy, basically you're just going to get shredded to pieces by these pieces of shrapnel. With cluster munitions, they're a bit different. And what they do is the projectile is shot out, and rather than it fragmenting into like exploding and shooting out these little fragments, what actually happens is there's a number, like many little explosives in there in the actual like warhead, I guess you could call it, or like the initial projectile. And what happens is it basically covers like this roughly the same area, but each impact is its own little explosive. So it makes it much harder to hide from from a cluster bomb or these cluster munitions, you can't just like hide in a trench and expect to be like fine, because again, there's so many of these small explosives that are just not really easily blocked or obscured by, hiding behind something. So you're just more likely to die essentially within this radius of the explosion, and it's also much more damaging to any kind of like armored vehicles, buildings, structures, what have you. Like there just isn't a significant difference between this and this. You're basically doing the same thing, only the cluster munitions, they're just more damaging. So for her to say, "Oh, I strongly disagree against using cluster munitions," like there's just not a substantive difference between conventional artillery and cluster munitions. The only massive difference is rather than having to deal with these sharp pieces of shrapnel, you're dealing with smaller explosives. So if she has a problem with cluster munitions, like she would in theory have a problem with any kind of weaponry. And again, if you have a problem with the use of any kind of weaponry, this is someone who you'd expect if there was a war to break out, or if a war was necessary, rather than actually doing what was necessary and going to war and stopping some sort of fascist tyrant, she would just try the appeasement approach, where, oh, let's just give them what they want so we don't have to go to war. And by the way, Russia's been using cluster munitions since the very beginning of the war. So if she has a problem with cluster munitions, why hasn't she publicly spoken out about what Russia's been doing, but instead waited until Ukraine was given cluster munitions and then started complaining about Ukraine using cluster munitions? It makes no fucking sense. It's anti-Ukraine, pro-Russia bullshit.
Should be according